What's going on, Overemployment Army? Today I have a crazy story, something I caught wind of last night on X, just strolling through my feed. And Overemployment kind of went viral last night, not for the good reasons. This guy's a complete idiot. If he did follow my videos, he wouldn't have been in this situation that he is. This guy's from India. He makes about $30,000 to $40,000 per month in combined salary, juggling at least 5 full-time startup jobs at once. Yeah, so this guy sounds like a hustle legend, right? Well, his name's Soham Parikh. He's a 20-something coder from India who went viral in 2025 for doing exactly that. So his story lit up Silicon Valley like a wildfire, and he was turned into an anti-hero overnight. Sounds like something out of a movie. If you guys have seen Catch Me If You Can, it's kind of similar to that. So let's just go into the meltdown that was happening yesterday. So let's set the stage. So yeah, in early 2025, July, Soham Parikh's secret life blew up on social media, and it was thanks to a startup founder whose name is Suhail Doshi, known for founding Mixpanel and Playground AI. So he fired off a tweet and a PSA on X, Twitter, to fellow founders. He said that there's a guy named Soham Parikh in India who works 3 to 4 startups at the same time. He's been prying on YC companies and more. Beware. And that's what Doshi wrote. He even added that he hired and fired Soham within a week for lying, quotations, lying, scamming people, and that a year later the guy was still at it. So this guy was hustling, man. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he had over 10 jobs at once. So this guy is literally, I do respect him. He's probably had immense stress at working probably over 10 remote jobs at once, but man, there's a limit, you know. Like, you gotta take the proper precautionary everything. You gotta do it in a way where you don't get caught. This guy obviously didn't do that. So yeah, we'll get into a bit of how he kind of messed up and how I would have avoided it if I was him. But anyways, so that post by Doshi got over 20 million views. And obviously, in other words, it blew up. Founders, investors, engineers, you name it. Everyone in tech was talking about Soham. So yeah, from there was like opening the floodgates, right? So dozens of startup founders piled on with surviving Soham stories. So apparently this dude had cycled through at least 15 to 19 different tech jobs since 2021. Some were hiring him right at that moment. I had no idea until they saw the tweets. Many hired him only to fire him a few weeks or months later for vanishing or underperforming. So that's a key point right there. So he took more on his plate than he could handle. So he was not only underperforming, it was also like quiet quitting and vanishing. So complete idiot, bad rep for all overemployed people. The more fire that overemployment gets, I hope no one makes some sort of software as a service to kind of track people and how many jobs they're working. Otherwise, we could get blacklisted. So this guy's a complete idiot, very selfish. If he was going to do that, he should have done it in a way where he doesn't kind of screw everyone else over, right? So complete stupid dumbass is what I want to call this guy. Anyway, so it turns out Soham had a playbook. He aced the technical interview, so I gotta give him that. Like, this guy literally killed every single technical interview. So dude, at this point, if you're juggling 10 jobs at once, why don't you just create a technical interview course or a technical interview channel? Like, dude, you're the goat at doing interviews. Like, come on now, right? So anyway, in his playbook, he aced the technical interview. He landed the jobs, often at like hot Y Combinator startups, and then stopped showing up or slow walk the work once the paychecks start rolling in. So once he landed a job, he kind of just didn't care that much. He kind of quiet quit, right? Like the money was coming in, so he doesn't really care at that point anymore. Just complete dumbass. Anyway, so in one case, he even walked away with a free company MacBook before getting the boot. Like, come on, dude. Like, I respect the hustle there, but yeah. So yeah, so how did he finally get caught, right? That's probably the question you guys are all wondering. So ironically, through the very startup community he targeted, Sahil Doshi didn't just randomly tweet. He had privately confirmed with other YC founders that they'd all been hit by the same quotation scam. So people are calling overemployment a scam, and I don't really agree with that. At the very worst, I think it's unethical. But dude, like, when I promote overemployment, I'm promoting that people actually put in the work at both jobs and they get the work done. That's all that matters, right? It's as long as you're getting the work done. That should be the bottom line at every company you work for. I'm not saying to join companies, quiet quit, and steal laptops and just not work anymore. That's complete stupidity, and I would never promote that. But anyways, only the real OGs of overemployment know what overemployment really stands for, and this guy is a complete idiot. So anyways, once they connected the dots, Doshi went public to warn everyone on Twitter. Y Combinator CEO Gary Tan also later chimed in, basically patting the YC network on the back for sharing info. Without the YC community, this guy would still be operating and maybe never been caught. I mean, I thought he would have been caught one way or another. Just because Doshi came out, that wasn't the only reason he got caught. It's because he's underperforming and probably not taking the right precautions to not get caught, right? So yeah, in other words, word of mouth shut Soham down. So now let's kind of talk about Soham a little bit and what his side of the story is. He recently did an interview somewhere on YouTube. You guys could go check it out. Yeah. So facing the online firestorm, Soham Parikh did something bold. He actually showed up to tell his side of the story. I kind of do respect him for that. Someone else got caught like that and basically ruined their career. Like, they probably wouldn't have showed up. I do remember reading that he changed his Instagram handle, his X handle, and GitHub handle to kind of not been caught, but it ended up firing back on him anyways. But yeah, just days after being outed, he went on a tech podcast called TBPN for a live interview. And on that podcast, he admitted that it is true. He said of like multi-job allegations. He said, "I'm not proud of what I've done. No one really likes to work 140 hours a week, right? But I had to do this out of necessity. I was in extremely dear financial circumstances." So first off, the thing I see here is he's working 140 hours a week. Like, if you guys have been following this channel for a long time, you know that you shouldn't. The whole point of overemployment is to work less, get the job done, and make more income. It's not work 140 hours a week, underperform. Like, are you stupid? If you're working 140 hours a week, what are you doing? So 140 hours a week, that's what he claimed he was clocking in total. So basically, 2, 3, 4 full-time jobs worth of overtime, to be fair. I mean, to be fair, he did sound kind of remorseful here, openly saying he doesn't endorse what he did and that desperation drove him to it. And honestly, I kind of don't really agree with that, because if he was desperate for money, he would have took on at most a second job. He wouldn't be at a point where he's juggling 10 remote jobs at once or going through over 20 jobs since 2021, right? So I call kind of bullshit there, and this doesn't add up there, right? He also explained how he juggled so many roles, and at one point up to 4 concurrently, he confirmed. And surprisingly, he had said he never outsourced the work to junior developers or AI assistants. It was just him, not sleeping, grinding away at each job in turn. And yeah, that also confirms that if you were against the wall and you didn't have that much money coming in, you didn't need to work 4 jobs at once to kind of do that. So anyways, he said this was not just a business to me. Every company that I've worked with, I deeply cared about. And if you did deeply care about them, come on, dude, you would have like been putting in the hours and getting the work done, right? Not quite quitting. So yeah, he also insisted that he tried to push back on the idea that he was cynically cash grabbing. He painted himself as a serial non-sleeper, not some criminal mastermind. So yeah, on the podcast, he also claimed his back was against the wall financially, which I just mentioned. I'll quote him right now. He said it was not out of greed, but essentially necessity. I just thought if I worked multiple places, I can basically help myself alleviate the situation I was in much faster. In other words, he thought a stack of paychecks would dig him out of a hole faster. He even mentioned mental health struggles pushing him into extreme hustle. So one striking quote that I found in the interview was that he said, "I really did not think this through." He admitted to TBPN it was an action done more out of desperation. So that right there might be the most honest thing he said throughout the whole saga. He didn't really have a grand plan by his own admission. He was kind of winging it, trying to make a lot of money quickly to fix his life. But as we'll see, not really thinking it through was one of his biggest mistakes. And if he found this overemployment channel before he started, he would not be exposed like this and in the same situation that he's in, right? So now let's kind of talk about the red flags and the sloppy secrets. So where did he go wrong? Let's break down the mistakes that turned his overemployment adventure into a train wreck. So yeah, One was lying and lack of transparency. So obviously, if you're secretly working multiple full-time jobs, you're not exactly going to volunteer that information. Well, Soham took deception to another level. He didn't just admit to his other jobs, he actively lied to employers' faces. He told some of them he was based in the United States when he was in India, going so far as to fake being in America on Zoom calls until one person caught him via an IP address ping. So they ran kind of a tracer on him and saw he was in Mumbai. Yeah, so a bit about this is you guys know that I don't really promote lying about which country you're in, which is something that I take very seriously. So whenever I give any type of advice, whether it's legal advice or not, which I don't promote, is this really varies country to country. So some people ask me, do I freeze my work number, right? And I'm like, hey, like this is only applicable to people that are Americans. It might not be applicable to Canadians, Australians. So I don't really talk too much about that type of stuff. But if you're going out of your way to kind of lie about which country you're living in and working out of, I think that's kind of crossing the line. So he also promised founders he'd relocate on an O1 visa soon and even claimed to have a San Francisco apartment waiting. And it was kind of lies after lies, all lies repeated for over a year to string companies along. He made up a bizarre excuse too, telling one boss he couldn't really come into the New York City office yet because it was unusually windy and rainy weather and it knocked out his internet. So yeah, oh, good going, buddy. Another time he said he had a chronic illness to cover for his missed work, completely fabricated, and this wasn't just not transparent, it was a straight up, like, I would even call it like fraud behavior. Yeah, so number two, it was overcommitment by a lot. So most people pulling overemployment like us, so we kind of stick to two, maybe three, and even four, like we kind of push it, but there's only 168 hours in a week. So I always promote that if you're working multiple jobs, you really want to get the work done, but you want to work the least amount of hours necessary, right? So Soham tried to run five simultaneous jobs. I honestly think it's more just off the tweets I've seen. And that's not overemployment, that's beyond overemployment. That's self-inflicted burnout. The combined workload was basically impossible to maintain and inevitably things fell through the cracks. So he was constantly MIA or missing deadlines at one company because he was busy with another. One founder who hired him described him how on day one and day two he called in sick. Then on day three, the team noticed he hadn't even cloned their code repository and was committing code to a different startup's project in the middle of the day. So guess what? That's a huge red flag. By week two, he was making wild excuses about medical scares and still not delivering any work. So in short, he took on far more than any one person could really handle, and it obviously showed. So an overemployment pro tip, if you bite off five jobs at once, you're inevitably going to choke. And that's exactly what he did. In contrast, if you're working five jobs at once, but you're putting in, let's say, less than 8 hours at each job, that's fine, right? But if you're working 40 hours at each job and you're working five jobs, it's not possible. Number three, sloppy operational hygiene. So for someone pulling a high stakes con, Soham left a crazy paper trail. He reused the same references so many times that one former colleague eventually got fed up giving reference calls and started warning people to report him. He didn't even bother changing his real name or hiding his identity, so when another startup posted a team video on social media, guess who was spotted in the background? Yup, Soham. Supposedly not working anywhere else at the time. His excuses were elaborate but very easily disprovable. Case in point, he told one founder he was delayed on work because a military drone stuck during an India-Pakistan conflict damaged his house. Like, come on. A dramatic excuse that fell apart when they realized he lived over 1,200 miles away from the conflict zone. So this guy, man, like, I applaud him for having so many jobs at once, but dude, come on, man. Like, this is just your fault at this point. So it only took a bit of Googling for that lie to kind of implode. He also neglected basic work duties at his various jobs. So like the guy who never even downloaded the code base of the startup paying him, like come on, that's just sloppy. It basically screamed I'm doing too much elsewhere and got him caught almost immediately. So basically in short, Soham's approach was toxic moonlighting, lying on resumes. Founders suspected parts of his resume were fake. Lying in interviews, lying on the job, and trying to juggle an absurd number of commitments. So obviously this is a recipe for disaster and exactly why he became a giant cautionary tale. Like, pure viral. All right, so now let's kind of look at the industry reaction. So this guy went from folk hero to a full-out fraud. So here's where it gets interesting. When the story went viral, reactions were all over the map. In the startup world, some folks were furious. They called him a scammer who stole salary and opportunities from truly dedicated engineers. Founders he duped felt personally betrayed. One described the saga as a huge waste of time, and Soham's behavior as a direct immoral behavior. Some even wanted legal consequences. A former reference of his urged reporting Soham to U.S. immigration authorities for visa fraud, saying he abused tourist visas to scam startups. Recruiters flat out flagged him as a radioactive, not to be hired. And yeah, on the flip side, a weird thing happened. A chunk of the tech community turned him into a meme and kind of a weird folk anti-hero. So they joked that having Soham apply to your startup was a new badge of honor. You haven't made it in the startups until you've hired Soham Parikh. So this guy's kind of like the face for overemployment in the worst way possible. Yeah, so in one Reddit thread, quipped that he was sticking to like the tech bros, getting paid by well-funded startups and sticking it to the man. They also riffed on his interviewing skills. Apparently, the guy is legendary at nailing interviews. So one of the tech recruiting founders, Chris Bake, even tweeted, "He's clearly one of the greatest interviewers of all time," and honestly, I don't suspect that. All right, so there's some lessons and takeaways for the overemployed. So, what can we learn from this story, especially those experimenting with overemployment? Here's the rundown that I want to give. Right. So, number one, don't be Soham. Seriously, if you're going to work more than one job, keep it reasonable. Two jobs can be doable if you manage your time and actually perform good at both. Maybe three if one is super low demand, but 4 or 5 full-time startups at once, it's not going to work out unless you're working less than 6 hours, 7 hours for all of them. You want to choose the right jobs, right? So Soham went for small, high-pressure startups. Some even wanted him on site, and that's basically the hardest environment to hide divided attention. Everyone at a tiny startup is wearing 5 hats and working crazy hours. A smart, overemployed worker picks larger organizations or roles with relaxed oversights and lots of downtime. Big corporations with slow pace and remote friendly culture are the best. Early stage startups, not so much. Yeah, so another thing I want to talk about is quality of work still matters. So the overemployment strategy is not about getting paid for nothing. It's about doing enough at each job to keep your employers happy or at least unaware. And Soham apparently did almost no work at some gigs. And one founder discovered Soham hadn't even completed any tasks for weeks, blaming poor health while actually coding for someone else. That's basically taking salary under fraud. The ethical way to be overemployed is actually to contribute to each role. If you find you can't deliver because you're overloaded yourself, either scale back or don't be shocked when you're caught and canned. Another quick thing is obviously protect your privacy and data and know when to tap out. So overemployment can be lucrative, but it's also stressful and not a long-term lifestyle for most. So if your mental or physical health is deteriorating, which Soham alluded to, consider backing off. The point of earning all that extra cash is defeated if you're too burnt out or too depressed to enjoy it. Have a goal, so pay off your debt, build savings, work towards it, but don't drive yourself into the ground. And definitely don't do 140 hours weeks. That's one ticket to disaster. Anyways, that's all for this video. I just wanted to kind of touch base upon this and so you guys know exactly what to do and not to do if you're in his situation. Don't be like him. Overemployment is still alive. Learn how to use AI well because those who know how to use AI will find jobs easier than people that don't know how to use AI. They'll pass interviews better if they know how to use AI as well. And also use AI to kind of help juggle multiple jobs. That's about it, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.